Hello everybody, I'm Casey, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About. And welcome back to Doctor Whooves Month. And what better place to start a discussion on Doctor Whooves than the quirky little audio series that started a phenomenon, Doctor Whooves and Assistant. Doctor Whooves and Assistant was originally a one-off video done for fun by two people who would become the show's leads. But after a while, they decided to turn the concept into a full-blown series, which is now produced under the name Ponies with Pockets Productions. So, what's the series about? In the first story, the Doctor lands in the outskirts of Ponyville, having recently regenerated into a pony. Ditzy comes across him and becomes his temporary assistant, while the Doctor figures out why he wound up in Equestria. Turns out he landed just in time for the Summer Sun celebration and the return of Nightmare Moon. So the Doctor tries to stop Nightmare Moon, with Ditzy reluctantly tagging along, but the main six beat them to it. A bit anticlimactic for the first adventure in hindsight, but a good start nonetheless. And since, even after Nightmare Moon turns back into Princess Luna, the Doctor can't seem to leave Equestria, he decides to continue his travels to see what this strange new world has to offer, and Ditzy decides to join him for the long run. But the answers to why he landed in Equestria, what he was doing before this happened, or what caused him to regenerate, those will remain a mystery to this day. Though I have every confidence that those questions will be answered eventually. But before we go more into the story, let's go over the creative team. Ditzy is played by series creator Piers Smolder, whose creative credits in the fandom are a mile long. But as far as voice work, while he has been seen as various characters throughout various projects, he was the definitive voice of Derpy for quite a while. You might have heard him in the role in projects like Turnabout Storm and Project Thundercloud. He was such an influence on the character that fans speculate that Derpy's new voice in Slice of Life was inspired by Piers. This guy is super talented. Not only creating the series to begin with and playing a starring role, he's also written most of the episodes, until fairly recently when they started bringing on guest writers. But what's a Doctor Who series without a Doctor? The Doctor was originally played by Keiko and Gilly. Outside of being the Doctor, some of his more notable performances are from Turnabout Storm and a few appearances in Doctor Who Adventures. In fact, Turnabout Storm has a little bit of fun with this information.
What's the matter?
It's that pony over there.
Him? What about him?
He's been eyeballing me since the trial started. He's making me kind of nervous.
Why don't we just ask him why he's doing that?
That's the thing. I feel as though I'll create some sort of paradox if I do.
Ha! Love it. But if you noticed, I did say originally, because like the audio drama I reviewed last year, there was a major change in casting. Keiko and Gilly left the show at the end of episode 8, so rather than have the Doctor regenerate again and work with a whole new incarnation when we just gotten to know this one, they found a way around this. See, in his final episode, the Doctor's voice changes when he redirected a minor bit of residual regeneration energy that was released when an eldritch horror tried to pull him into another dimension, changing only his vocal cords. You know what? Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, it's not like the show itself hasn't done weirder things with regeneration energy.
It's you!
Oh, yes.
You're naked!
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, Jester Dorama, whose most well-known role besides this is as Dr. John Trotton in Sherlock Whooves, took over the role, and he's doing really well so far. But I'll go more into that in a minute. And I know there's another main character from later in the series, but again, I'll get to him in a minute. For now, let's go over the series itself. So what kind of tone does the series have? Well, for the most part, it's very comedic. While there's the same kind of adventure inspired by Doctor Who, heck, the Cybermen show up pretty early on as cyber ponies, a lot of the times the threats are in Equestria. In fact, the series even tries to integrate some of Derpy and the Doctor's moments in the show and explains them in their own universe. Like the Doctor's appearances in Appaloosa, Derpy's change in main color in Winter Wrap-Up, and there's even an entire episode dedicated to getting as many of these references as possible out of the way. While these could come across as pandering or forced, and sometimes they do, for the most part, it's a fun take to put on these moments. Episode 9 in particular manages to tell a fun and engaging story while weaving all of these seemingly unrelated incidents in the main show together. From the Doctor assisting photo finish and hoity-toity, to why he's a Pegasus sometimes. Personally, if it can be hit or miss, I think it's worth the effort. Plus, any video that gets El Monte to play photo finish is a good one in my book. Outside of putting a new take on familiar moments, a lot of time is spent around the Doctor getting familiar with pony society. And when I say familiar, I mean being as giddy as a Whovian meeting their favorite Doctor. That's pretty much this Doctor's biggest character trait. He's very silly, childish, and gets excited about almost everything this new world throws at him. Even when the episodes get more serious, they don't forget this, and it manages not to clash with the tone. Plus, it's an interesting character trait. After all, it's not often the Doctor comes across something he isn't familiar with. Now he has practically an entire universe filled with the unknown. It's the same fish out of water mindset that's usually safe for the companion, but it's nice to see it in the Doctor. And that's part of what makes this incarnation unique. And his wide-eyed enthusiasm at what he comes across in Equestria and the reactions he gets when he pries a bit too much is where most of the comedy comes from. And even 11 episodes in, it's managed not to get old yet. To me, anyway. But as interesting as this trait is, it's not all this incarnation is. He is still the Doctor, the oncoming storm, the great warrior, the last of the Time Lords, kind of. So it's not all going to be rainbows and jelly babies. I'll touch on this more when I review Wrong Way Backwards, but this version of the Doctor seems to try to hide his sadness and anger more than most. Because when it comes out, when those times come when he shows how he got those names, it can be unsettling. It's for that reason that makes me think that he came right after the 10th Doctor, since that is pretty much where the character was at the end of Tennant's run. But there's no evidence to really support this, it's just my personal theory. Keiko and Gilly managed to give an excellent balance between these two conflicting character traits. Even though the fury of the Time Lord side doesn't come into full swing until Wrong Way Backwards, there are still small moments in his performance where you can hear the sadness that's become synonymous with the character. But both sides of this Doctor only came into view towards the end of Keiko's run, so that was something I was worried about with the replacement actor. But after his farewell episode, there were a couple of lighter episodes to balance things back out after so much intensity. During those episodes, Jester Dorama did a wonderful job of carrying that giddy, wide-eyed spirit of this Doctor through his performance. But it wasn't until the latest episode, The Isle of Flaputa, that the rest of what makes the Doctor, shine through in this new performer. Without giving too much away, the Doctor has to make some very tough choices that affect the people around him greatly, reminding him of other times when he's had to do the same. You can feel the sadness at the situation he's put in, and the regret at the decisions he had to make. While I was fine with Jester before, now I'm fully confident he'll be able to pull off whatever the role calls for him in the future. But that's just the Doctor. What about his companion? As I said before, fan-favorite character Derpy Hooves is the Doctor's companion in the series. And while this was not the first time the Doctor and Derpy were teamed up, this is probably the most well-known, and the reason why it's so popular. Now, remember in my last video when I said I hadn't been watching MLP for long before this? Well, I actually hadn't heard of Ditzy before Doctor Whooves. I caught on afterwards, but I didn't know anything about her before this. In fact, to prove just how much of an MLP noob I was in 2012, and this is true, in this series, the ponies have pockets, which I assume they added to make the characters carrying things around a lot easier. But I thought that was a thing in the actual show, and I just hadn't gotten to it yet.
That's how much I know. Right, let's keep moving.
Back to Ditzy. Ditzy is just an average, everyday pony. The only unusual things about her are her eyes, and that she doesn't have the best vocabulary. She's a guide for the Doctor through the simplest things in Equestria, while he shows her the wonders of her own universe that she never could have imagined. Ditzy is innocent, yet not afraid to stand up to some pony, even the Doctor, can get overwhelmed by what these journeys throw at her, yet in the end has a strong determination to help and continue on, and well, she's a little bit of everything that makes a good companion. But what makes Ditzy stand out is her willingness to listen, even when ponies really aren't saying much. Ditzy had been bullied in her past for her eyes and for being klutzy, and we're led to believe that for a while, she was very closed off because of this, which may be why she was so standoffish to the Doctor in the first episode. She can be hurt easily because of these insecurities, but it's because of this that she gives some ponies more of a chance, or notices things about them that the Doctor might overlook. The episode Call Upon the Doctor is a good example of this, where the Doctor disappears and she's left to solve the problems of a sea pony-like alien race. She bands everyone together to get to the source of the problem, helps them work through some personal problems, and when they do find the villain of the story, she has a lot of horrible things to say about the Doctor, who is worshipped in this culture. But instead of trying to deny these accusations, Derpy gives her own perspective on the Doctor. That what the villain is saying is partially true, and she doesn't deny that. Like I said, Derpy sees more to a pony than they let on, and the Doctor is no exception. But she also sees what's wonderful about him, and that influencing him with her compassion and innocence makes them both better than they have been alone. Here, the Doctor is smart, but he also prefers the quick solution, to try and save the day and solve the problem immediately. But Derpy slows down, talks, or sometimes just listens. That's all people need sometimes, just to feel they're understood. And that's what Derpy is for, and why the Doctor and Derpy make such a great pair. And not in that way. Come on, guys, he's got River Song. They'll be happily confused together.
Hi, honey. I'm home.
And what sort of time do you call this?
Besides, they gotta make room for the newest companion, TikTok. Oh yeah, I should probably talk about him. TikTok's a unicorn played by Pegasus Brill, the show's editor, who was introduced in episode 8. After the events of his debut episode, he decides to join the TARDIS crew, now a triple threat. TikTok is an interesting character. For one, he's got a great backstory. TikTok is one of 2 adopted sons of a Griffin general, and lived during a very long war in Equestria's old days. And while his brother lost his parents during the war, what happened to TikTok's family is unclear. Like, eerily unclear. They even seem to imply that he doesn't remember anything before he was found. Foreshadowing, maybe? Anyway, during this time, he's seen as something of a social pariah, constantly inventing and constantly failing at it. But the Doctor discovers that the only reasons his inventions fail is because his ideas are ahead of his time. Very ahead of his time. Once he joins the TARDIS crew, he becomes a very strong asset. He even reverse engineers the psychic paper. I really like the idea of an inventor traveling with the Doctor. It's something I'm really surprised they haven't done on the show itself before. At least, not to this degree. He kind of reminds me of that mechanic guy from Mummy on the Orient Express who helped the Doctor out, and we all thought he was going to be the Doctor's new companion. And then he wasn't. What? Yeah, I'm bitter. But there's just so much potential and a fun dynamic to be found with a tech-savvy companion, and TikTok is a wonderful example of that. He's a very slow and calculating pony, and that even comes across in his demeanor. TikTok suffers from the effects of an unusual venom that partially paralyzed him, mostly in his face, making him unable to emote much. Some fans have criticized TikTok's monotone delivery, but it just seems to be one of those things that you either like or you don't. I've heard similar complaints against characters like Daria or Maud Pie. But as time goes on, TikTok does emote a bit more, and the voice actor does a great job at giving TikTok personality while still being aware of his condition. But he does seem to open up more and gets more comfortable around his new friends who forge connections with him in different ways. The Doctor being fascinated by his intellect and his magic, to a somewhat obsessive level, and Ditzy on a more personal level, helping him come out of his shell and express himself more.
TikTok, what are...
I'm hugging you. Isn't this what you usually do for me?
But...
I'm just gonna assume people have started shipping them. Is there fan art? Yeah, I've seen so much of this over the years, I'm not even surprised anymore. After TikTok joined the group, the episodes got a lot bigger, with more world building, higher stakes, more creative scenarios, and an overall much larger feel. Episodes like Terror and the Isle of Flaputa have much more in common with Doctor Who than the episodes that came before them, but still not losing the comedy and innocence it started with, just putting it through tougher challenges. But like Doctor Who, there are some continuing mysteries, like this guy, who randomly popped up in a few of the episodes. It wasn't until episode 10 that he made it known who he was. This guy is Top Hat, played by the Jam Jar, who we'll talk more about next time. He seems to play a Captain Jack River Song kind of role, popping up every now and then and out of order with the Doctor and the gang. But unlike those characters, he's not exactly thrilled with his interactions with the Doctor. Apparently his vortex manipulator keeps locking on to wherever the TARDIS ends up by accident. I kind of love that. A pony who reluctantly keeps getting pulled into the Doctor's escapades. I am really interested to see what other encounters the group will have with Top Hat, and why he has a vortex manipulator in the first place. Seriously, how did a pony get one of those? But while Doctor Whooves and Assistant uses elements from both shows, it has a lot more in common with MLP, especially as far as pacing, tone, and, for a while, environment is concerned. It does expect you to go in with at least a working knowledge of Doctor Who, since they explain more about the world of MLP from the Doctor's point of view, but the series as a whole will feel much more familiar to an MLP audience than a Doctor Who one. That's not a complaint, it's just how the show is done. And for what it is, it works remarkably well. Overall, there's a reason Doctor Whooves and Assistant is so popular. It takes scenarios MLP fans are familiar with and looks at them through a new lens. A lens that an entirely different fandom can relate to. But that doesn't mean the show isn't willing to take us out of our comfort zone and into a darker situation that fits better in a Doctor Who story, which could be jarring, but they find a good balance. The performances are top-notch, the stories are entertaining and creative, and the production value, while clearly shows room to grow in its first few episodes, has grown immensely from its humble beginnings. And it is clear that this series still has much more to offer. What that will be, only time will tell. Now to wrap this up, here's a new segment for when I talk about an entire series of something. This was a really tough choice. While there are episodes that aren't as good as others, the ones that are great have such different things to offer, it's almost like comparing apples and oranges. I'll go with episode 8. Outposts on the Fringe and Terror were vastly different in tone from the episodes that came before, and the first episode that could have fit just as comfortably in Doctor Who. With a suspenseful story, a brilliant ensemble cast, a great introduction for a new companion, and an absolutely chilling atmosphere. There are some really uncomfortable moments in this one, but they still manage to throw in some of the fun and laughs that make this show so fun. The Doctor freaking out about seeing his first griffin is one of my favorite moments in the entire show. So if you haven't seen Doctor Whooves and Assistant yet, it's certainly worth checking out. There's even animated versions of the first 3 episodes available if that would be a more comfortable way to start the series, but trust me, those will hook you enough to check out the entire official release. Next time, we'll be looking at the star-traveling stallion from a different point of view in Doctor Who's Adventures. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.